All right, well, everybody, welcome to the first of this afternoon's Teen Word on the Street panels for this year's 2021 Word on the Street Lethbridge Festival. We are here in Zoom land because such is the world that we live in. My name is Paige. I am the teen librarian here at the Lethbridge Public Library. Currently not, obviously, in the Lethbridge Public Library. I'm in the cozy living room at my own house. I hope you guys are all cozy and comfortable and ready to hear about some fantastic teen authors this afternoon. We have 4 sessions happening this afternoon. They all start at 15 minutes, give or take, past the hour. Our first one right now, let me get the big long title correct, is, well, I'm on the kids things. We're not the kids things. We're the teen things. We are. It's kind of a funny story is our official session title today for 1 o'clock. And joining me this afternoon in our first session are Heather Smith and Ben Philippe. I'm going to start off first by saying that the Lethbridge Public Library would like to acknowledge that we're gathered here on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains. And we pay respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The city of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. So some important things to keep in mind while we're hanging out here and learning about stories. Let us begin. I'm going to introduce first Heather Smith. Heather is joining us from Waterloo today. And Heather, would you like to speak a bit about your books and your writing? Let people know who you are.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paige. That was a really nice introduction. The book that I'm going to be reading from momentarily is Barry Squire's Full Tilt. And it's a book about a young fella. It's set in St. John's, Newfoundland. That's where I'm from. And he wants to be a full tilt dancer. And he's a very rambunctious kind of a kid. Some people might find him kind of annoying or aggravating. And I think that's fine in a protagonist. Personally, I do not mind that one bit. And that's why I write characters that are real. And we can all be annoying at times. So our characters should be as well. He's not annoying in the excerpt I'm about to read. He's actually quite sweet. But the beginning of the book, it opens with Barry Squires. He goes to the new bingo hall. It's the grand opening, and the Full Tilt Dancers, they are an Irish step dancing troupe. And he is kind of taken with them because he has a lot of energy and he sees them like beating the crap out of the floor with these tap shoes. And he's like, I want to do that. So he's quite enthralled with them. He goes home. He has a 6-month-old baby brother who he loves dearly, and he takes him out for a jaunt. He puts him in the stroller and they go for a walk. And in this scene, they go back to the bingo hall where the Full Tilt Dancers had just had their performance. Okay. Sometimes in Newfoundland, you can have 4 seasons in one day. So even though it was the end of March and spring should have been on its way, I stuffed Gordon his snowsuit to keep him warm on our post-bingo afternoon jaunt. As usual, I started by naming the homeowners and house colors. Merchant Red, Cody White, Walling Black. It was a tradition I'd started to keep things interesting back when I wasn't allowed to take Gord off York Street. Now that we were allowed to go further, I kept it up because Gord screamed if I didn't. Sometimes I wish Gord was as flexible with his routines as he was with his body. I saw him kiss his own arse once. Hanrahan Green, O'Brien Blue, ah ba, ah da, ah pa. Only 6 months old and speaking in whole sentences. It was no wonder I took every opportunity to show him off. He was practically a child genius. Part of our routine was going to Cane's. If Boo wasn't busy selling smokes or dishing up his famous Jig's dinner, he'd sit us down and tell us a ghost story. He'd seen a headless dude on Signal Hill once. He'd come upon him on a dark and stormy night, and they locked eyes. Locked eyes. I couldn't believe it. Sometimes Gord nodded off during Boo's stories, but as soon as we'd leave the store, he'd perk right up. It was the air that did it. It was fresh and salty and went right up our noses. He'd perk up even more when I'd take him to the harbor. I'd tip his stroller over the dock and say, "Hope you can swim, Gord." He loved that. An old woman yelled at me once. She said I was foolhardy. She said, take a chill pill, miss. I said, take a chill pill, missus. He's got a seatbelt on. Today, instead of going to Kane's, we went back to the bingo hall. The plywood was still outside. Watch this, Gord. I copied the dance moves the full tilt dancers had done earlier. The almighty racket was glorious. There was no music, so I sang. I'm not going to sing it, by the way. The night that Pat Murphy died is a night I'll never forget. Some of the boys got loaded, drunk, and they ain't been sober yet. I da-da-da'd the bits I didn't know, and when the words came back, I belted them out. Mrs. Murphy sat in the corner pouring out her grief when Kelly and his gang came tearing down the street. They went into an empty room and a bottle of whiskey stole and kept the bottle with the corpse to keep that whiskey cold. A corpse is a dead body, Gord, I explained. The boys weren't really celebrating Pat Murphy's life. They just wanted an excuse to party. That's what I think anyway. I'm not one for lyrics, not really. It's the melody I like. What about you, Gord? Do you like the melody? What do you think of my dancing, Gord? Pretty good, huh? What's with your face, Gord? You're not pooping, are you? If you shits your pants, we'll have to go home. Gord laughed his sweet baby belly laugh, the one that erupted for the first time 2 months ago when I stubbed my toe on his high chair. I'd hopped on one foot shouting, ouch, ouch, ouch. And the ha, ha, ha that burst out of his body was hearty and deep. Tears had pricked my eyes, not from the pain that throbbed in my foot, but from the happy pain that throbbed in my heart. I checked Gord's bum. He hadn't pooped his pants. So we continued on to Bannerman Park. I tried stuffing him into a baby swing. You're some fat, Gord. But don't worry, once you start walking, you'll lose all that weight. Just don't go losing your cheeks, okay? That's what makes you so cute. No one likes a baby with skinny cheeks. I pushed him high. Hold on, Gord. If you fall out and die, Mom will kill me. The last thing I wanted to do was ruin Mom's day. After months of the baby blues, she was finally having a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. That definitely gives us a good taste of your music and the characters.
Thank you.
Ben, would you like to take over, do a little bit of an intro of yourself and share some of your book?
Sure, absolutely. I'm nowhere near as good of a reader as Heather, so I will apologize for that first. My name is Ben Philippe. I write YA books and TV sometimes. And this book, Charming as a Verb, was my second one, and it was my attempt, it was my permission to write a full rom-com, which I love, and I finally got to write one. So this is the story of Henry and Corinne, who meet and have all the rom-com expectations, tropes, adventures, choices, elegant narrative choices you would expect from two amazing people falling in love. Henry is very confident, and I would say that Corinne is unlikable, which is sort of the thing that brings them together in this excerpt. Corinne takes out a piece of paper from her bag, folded into a perfect square. She adjusts her glasses once, and then another time, and then finally begins to read out loud. Corinne is a gifted student and will make an excellent academic addition to the class of 2025. She is smart, meticulous, and outspoken, and while her level of intensity may not serve her socially, her commitment to her academic pursuit is undeniable. What was that? Henry asked. The recommendation letter I got from Miss Carroll, Corinne answers. Dang. I made it out of 2 of Miss Carroll's history classes with an A- and a B+ respectively, but even now I know that Miss Carroll is not to be trusted. The woman would excel in a dystopian world where teachers can electrocute students. It's not that bad of a recommendation, I lie. Are you kidding me? Corinne bemoans. This is for Princeton. She might as well have put in big red highlighter. Do not admit this person. They are a social pariah. I'm sorry, I say after a beat, and I actually am. Corinne seems taken aback by my apology, but I shrug. I get it, I tell her. She looks at the letter again, shaking her head. She looked right at me and said she'd be happy to write the recommendation. Happy to do it. Those were her words. I raise an eyebrow. Really? I mean, Corinne backtracks. First, she strongly suggested that I consider taking a year off and travel like some Instagram influencer or child of screenwriters, but I insisted. Maybe the 4th handwritten request was a little too much, but still, this is This is mean. Corinne sits down a few steps higher than me on the stoop. For a moment there, Corinne Troy, of all people, looks truly lost, as if the letter simply didn't compute. It's exhausting, I offer. I thought the whole point of schools like ours was to spit us right into Ivy League colleges and corner offices. Corinne doesn't say anything, still staring at the letter. I feel a thoroughly weird compulsion to comfort her. A single letter can't keep you out of college, I continue. You know that, right? You're always on the dean's list at school. But colleges like Princeton don't have to make concessions, Henry, she snaps. They get 35,000 applicants from all over the world every year. They'll pick some dean-listed applicant with my exact grade and extracurriculars and ethnicity even, but who also happens to be breezy with like fun braids and poetry blogs. Some black girl magic social media influencer with viral makeup tutorials will elbow me right out of contention. It's dramatic, but Corinne's not wrong. It's established knowledge that all of the effort you put into being the perfect college applicant should also look effortless. That's the great catch-22 of higher education. Be perfect, but make it look easy. Meanwhile, Corinne Troy is nothing if not intensity and effort personified. She folds the paper again, rubbing two fingers over every single side as she does. Like, am I that intense? She asks. What do other kids think of me, around school? Of course, Corinne Troy does not have the largest audience of friendly acquaintances to pull on the matter because she is, in a word, intense. They think you're fine, I lie again. They think I'm terrifying, she says, unconvinced. Fine, Corinne. They think you're the Loch Ness Monster without gift shop options. Her eyes widen, and just like that, I know I'm in for a long conversation. Auntie?
Thank you, Ben. That was a great taste of your characters. We have one question already from our audience, and I should mention to our audience, if you have questions or things you would like to, questions or things that you would like to ask our presenters, we do have the Q&A function turned on, so you can toss a question in there, and I will share it with our presenters, our authors this afternoon. So Ben, the first question from our audience is for you, from Hillary, who is looking forward to reading Charming as a Verb on audiobook, so listening to that one. And Hillary would like to know, what's it like hearing your characters come alive in someone else's voice?
In my case, it's great because I've written 3 books and they were all sort of like narrated by the same person, James Fooey. And I just love his voice. It's sort of like what I imagine my books in these days. And people think his voice is my voice, whereas that's really not the case. He has a cool, smooth, like theater voice, and that is not his situation. But yeah, it's really fun.
Excellent. Heather, what's your experience with audiobooks? Do you have, I feel like some of yours have definitely been done as audiobooks.
Yeah, they have. The Agony of Bon O'Keefe was an audiobook, and Barry Squire's Full Tilt is also an audiobook. And it's a really fun experience as an author. I don't know about Ben's experience, but for me, I had the privilege of listening to the short list. So like 3 people who are kind of auditioning. Ben's nodding. I love your voice, Ben, by the way. I think you should be doing your books. So that's super cool to be able to listen to the different interpretations that different people have. And Barry Squires in particular was really fun because the person who ended up doing it is just a riot. Like you can just hear in her voice, just the humor just comes out of it. So it's a really neat experience to have.
Fantastic. All right. One of the questions I always like to ask our writers at Word on the Street is, what is your writing process like? We talk sometimes about whether people are planners or whether they're pantsers. So whether they plan everything out ahead of time or whether they just kind of fly by the seat of their pants and see what comes out. Ben, do you want to field that one first? What is your writing process? How do you write your books?
Sure. I didn't know about the whole like pantsers or planners thing until very recently. I would say that I am I'm a pantser, but I need a plan. If I just jump into a book without knowing what I'm going to do, it'll be like 3 chapters, and then I'll just like give it up and start something new. So I like to at least have a sense of like, this is the character I want to write, like really understand their voice in my head. And the genre always helps. This is a murder mystery. This is a coming of age. And just being able to sort of know what lane I'm writing in. And then once I have those things and a few key events sort of like firmly in mind, then I can just jump in and maybe, the event I thought would happen in the first half of the book is the thing that happens on the last page. That's totally fine. But I have a sense of where I'm going. So I think I'm somewhere in the middle.
Awesome. Heather, what's your mode of writing?
Yeah, I am right there with Ben. I'm mostly a pantser, fly by the seat of your pants type of a person. But I have an idea of what's going to happen. But I don't try and plan it out too much because I know a lot's going to change. I know a lot of the excitement about like writing is actually sitting down and doing it. And when you're doing it, it's evolving and new ideas are popping up like every paragraph or so. So I don't want to commit too much. If I sit down and plan something out, I've never done it, but I imagine if I did, it would be a bit of a waste of a time to a certain extent, because a lot of it would just get thrown out the window. And part of that is because I don't know my characters yet. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they would do in this situation. So I can't tell you before I write the book how they're going to react to something that might happen. So it all kind of unfolds as I go, basically. Yeah.
I also just love that sort of not concession, but just like being aware that I don't know my characters yet. Sometimes as an author, you're expected to just know everything about your book, but just like the exploring of the character that's in your head can be very fun. So I really like that phrasing.
Yeah, it's totally true. Oftentimes it feels like sometimes when you're reading, it feels like you're getting to know the character as you're reading, and other times that author knew exactly who that person was and knew who their backstory was and knows a million things about them that we don't know. It's just kind of interesting thinking about characters in that way, and what you know about them and what you don't know about them and what the reader knows about them and how that informs everything else that happens in the book. So
do either of you have kind of vision boards for your characters or your settings or anything like that? Do you do big collages, either digitally or physically, to kind of inspire you and keep you on track with your characters?
yeah, that's okay, Ben. No, not me. I don't at all. I don't have any vision boards. And I know people who do, and that works really well, and have Post-it notes. And that for me, that would confuse me. Like so this is a funny story, just to put that line in there. So when I unload the dishes, I get overwhelmed by the cutlery drawer. I never do the cutlery drawer. I always leave it for one of my kids or my husband to put away. I actually get palpitations when I look at all the cutlery and then all the little slots I have to put them in. So the idea of thinking, oh, I'm going to get all these Post-it notes and write everything that's going to happen and post it, like that's overwhelming and confusing to me. That would be horrifying for me. So I just need to sit down and write. And if I have some ideas that are coming up of future things I want to have in the book, I'll just write a little note further down in my document, and that's it. Anything else is just too overwhelming for my little pea brain.
Too much chaos.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have inspiration things that you look at when you're writing?
I don't have an inspiration board. I do agree with the idea that like if I turn my characters into bullet points a little too much, then I would lose the joy of like, exploring them or just like learning about them as I write. But I do have playlists because for both young adult books I wrote, The Field Guide to the North American Teenager and Charming as a Verb, they're characters who spend a lot of time with headphones on their heads. And I am too. I was scrolling through my Instagram the other day and all the photos, I have like giant red headphones on, and that's because I'm always listening to playlists. So I do have playlists for the specific characters. Henry from Charming as a Verb is like one of the most popular kids in school. So I had like a playlist of songs that a kid like that who still feels lonely would listen to. And for Norris, he's a transfer student in a new country, in a new school. He's a complete outsider. It's a lot of songs about like being a misunderstood teenager. So I have playlists, but that's the extent of it.
Have you published them anywhere?
Or anything like that?
Yeah.
Oh, I did post like one on Instagram for Henry of the song, like 6 or 7 songs, but I don't. No, I think like if you scroll through Instagram, you can find them, but I never sort of like released the HarperCollins playlist to the characters. Also, because I hear that I know one YA author who did that, and they got a cease and desist. I just don't need Troye Sivan to cease and desist.
No, fair. That's too much. Another question from the audience. Both of you have written books for audiences who are not teenagers, but the question is, why are teens your favorite audience? Are teens your favorite audience?
For me, I write picture books as well. So I do have a soft spot for little teeny kids who can't even read my words and just look at the pictures. But YA it's great writing for that age group, because when I look back at my life, that's where most of my memories lie, in those teen years. Like I don't remember that much before that. So it's really, and I have 3 teens, by the way. Well, one is 16 at the moment. So I know what a tumultuous time it can be, but equally what a wonderful time it can be and what a profound time it can be. So when you're writing characters who are going through a lot, it makes the writing a lot more interesting, I think. Yeah.
I think I'm on the other side in that like the other audience I write for is technically adult. I wrote a memoir / collection of short stories. And I really, really love YA audiences a lot more than the adult audiences, I'll say, just because I don't know what that says about me, but I feel like my YA stuff is understood a little bit more than my adult stuff. Because when I was writing the adult book, Sure, I'll Be Your Black Friend, the essays would be sort of, I would, peek at what they're saying on Goodreads or what they're saying on Amazon. And, the responses would be like, ooh, what a sharp dissertation of race in North America. And yeah, I talk about race, but sometimes I feel like the adult readers would lose the plot of the character. Or they're like, ooh, going back to the unlikable characters thing, like we'll be like, yeah, I don't enjoy a character or a protagonist who's like unlikable. And sometimes I'm unlikable in my memoir. But when it comes to the YA audiences, people seem to love characters who have flaws, and like you read those reviews and you talk to people and they're like, ooh, I wanted to strangle Henry when he did this. And oh, I hate him. I'd much rather if Corinne ends up with Marvin, a different character. And I love that. It feels like the level of involvement from younger readers or teen YA readers is not even more thoughtful or more positive, but just like more involved, which I really love interacting with.
Yeah, I think teens a lot of time with reading, and what I remember being a teen reader and what I see working with teens in the library, they're very immersive or immersed readers. They really, really dive into a story when it's something that they love or something that connects with them. And it just feels really, really true. I remember characters that I read from some of these books when I was a teenager. They become a part of your social circle in a weird fictional way.
Yeah. And sometimes too, I find, talking about the difference between adult readers and teen readers, sometimes adult readers reading teen fiction is a lot different from teens reading teen fiction. So a lot of the times I find adults that I might hear from or see writing comments, not necessarily about my books, but about YA in general. They're reading it through, like they're, first of all, Paige, I know you're not like this, and I really applaud librarians who are searching for books to put into kids' hands that kids can relate to. But some adults, some parents might read YA book and they're reading it through a lens of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and what what a certain child should read, what content could be in there. And that's a problem. And that's the difference. I don't think you would ever get a teen reading a book that might have something in there that might be a little bit edgy, going, I must shut this and not read this and put it away. It's an adult who is taking it away from them, which is kind of sad. And that's the difference between the adult reading a teen novel, sometimes, not always, and the teen reading it.
I love that. And I feel like teenagers are very, very judicious. Like when they put away a book, you cannot get them to pick it up again. And for a writer, I know that like if I write something that's too slow or boring or uninteresting, like the younger readers are going to be the first people to be like, nope, lame, what's the next one? And I love writing with that sort of like fire under my feet, just like, oh no, I have to tell an interesting story. Whereas adult readers will be like, they're okay if it's not interesting, they're okay if it's not good, but did you sort of hit the right notes that they want to like champion for their kids? It's kind of a funny story. Hey-o. My first book, not this one, but Charming as a Verb. In the first scene, the protagonist is in a new high school, and he bumps up against like a group of cheerleaders who are just coming out of practice, and he was filming the school, and they think he was filming them, and there's a confrontation, and it's like, oh, a gaggle of bitchy cheerleaders. That's original. And obviously, like, he goes on a journey, he ends up like becoming best friends with them, and by the end of the book, he's like, oh, I'm less of a loner than I thought, but I'm more of a jock. And that's sort of like his journey. But I remember like getting letters from adults who were like, yeah, this book is so misogynist. Like that he would use this language to describe cheerleaders. And at first I felt really bad about that. But then I was like, hang on, when I was 16, like the pack of like pretty popular kids who were sort of like mean to me, I was vitriolic about them. So even if they may not like the book, I stand by the fact that a surly teenager would narrate his own world with that language. But yeah, I really agree.
It definitely feels very honest. I see working and being next to a high school. I'm just going to bring up questions again. There's one, Grace, I will get to your question. I'm just saving it for a little bit later. Peyton has a question about Barry Squires. What was your decision about having a tragic aspect to your story? Not, for spoilers or anything like that,
yeah.
But YA books, like you guys have mentioned, there can be a lot going on. There can be a lot of drama. There's a lot of feels happening in a lot of YA books. What do you think, what's the big appeal to those big feelings, especially for teen readers?
Well, with Barry Squires, the event that happens in that book, it came at a time where there was big events happening in my life, like sad events. And what happens also happens to real people all the time. And in a weird way, as a writer, when I was writing it, I was thinking how hard it will be for some people to read it. And then I was thinking, so should I not do it? And then I decided, no, I absolutely have to do it because it's happened to people I know, and they deserve it to be seen in a book. You know what I mean? Like these things can't just not exist because we're trying to protect people from reading it. So it's sad, it's tragic. Lots of people cry when they read this book, and I think it's part of life. And I don't think we should shy away from really most any topic. I write picture books, so I wrote a picture book called The Phone Booth to Mr. Who Wrote His Garden, which was also very tragic. And it's like for, 6 and 7-year-olds are being read this book. And I think they can handle it. And I think to think that young readers can't handle it is doing them a disservice. But yeah, it just, for me, what happened to Barry Squires has a lot to do with what has been going on, personal tragedy in my life, and me channeling it through these characters, but also keeping it really funny at the same time, which is really weird because you got to read this funny book about this thing that happens. But we've all been in situations where we are laughing when it's really inappropriate. And it's like, why are we laughing? This is really sad, or this is really absurd. I'm going to laugh now and I'm going to find something funny about this situation. So I hope that answers the question.
Definitely using, humor as a coping mechanism, but also a way to process feelings is a big
Absolutely. Yeah.
Piles of questions coming through. We have 2 questions, Heather. I'm going to go back to you, and Ben, I will come back to you as well. Heather, 2 questions about Ebb and Flow, which is a book in verse.
Yes.
So from Grace, you magically captured both heart and humor in verse, which sounds impossible. Do you have more plans to write in verse? Why was that your choice for that book?
Yeah, the choice. So that book started as a picture book, actually. I started with just this idea of a child picking up a piece of sea glass and examining it and thinking about how it, started out as just a jagged old beer bottle, and now it's something beautiful, and about how we can all evolve that way. And when I started writing the story, it's a simple little picture book. It grew and grew and grew, but I really liked the simple way I was telling it, and I didn't want to change that. So then it just kind of became a verse novel, which was really kind of scary for me because I thought, I'm not a poet. Like, what am I doing? I can't do this. And I think as writers, and maybe Ben feels this way sometimes, you get the whole self-doubt thing where you're like, no, I can't do this. And I was invited to a panel for Ebb and Flow, and it was a poetry panel. I'm like, I'm not a poet. Like, I can't do this. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the short, concise way, how I could play around with more poetic phrasing. And yes, I will be doing it again.
Fantastic. We're getting close to 2:00, which is kind of our end point, or where I kind of aim for our end point. I do want to give you both a chance to talk about future things, because I know that's another thing our audience is always excited about. Is there anything that you're working on right now, Ben, that you're excited about that you can share, or a dream project that you would love to do someday?
Sure. I took a detour into nonfiction, which was emotionally draining, just to write about your life. You think it's going to be easier. That was like the hack when I was writing that book. Like, oh, all this stuff already happened. I know what's going to happen in the next chapter, but then it was just very draining to write. So I'm very excited to be like diving back into the world of YA. And for a little while, I was writing this book that I feel it was the expected third YA book from me. It sort of dealt with diversity and gentrification. And I really love all these characters, and I want to go back to it at some point. But then there was this other idea I had, which was really, really, really off the map. It's a fairy tale. Basically, it's from the world of fairy tales. And I was like, that's so silly. That's not what you should be writing. But whenever this project, when I should write, wouldn't like flow, that's the one I would go to. That's the one I would giggle while writing to myself. And it's already at like 40,000 words. So at some point, like recently, I was like, I'm just going to lean into this one. So it's a modern fairy tale about the prince from Sleeping Beauty who doesn't want to go into the forest and kiss a princess, because then he's going to have to get married and settle down and have the happy ending. So he just moves to New York City instead. So that is what I'm writing now.
Very good decision. Yeah. Well, that sounds great. I am a sucker for a fairy tale retelling, so I'll be watching for that one.
Thank you.
Heather, what's coming up next for you?
I have a picture book coming out in the fall called Slowpoke the Belle Island Mine Horse. And it came from, I very reluctantly went on a mine tour in Belle Island in Newfoundland. I went underground and I didn't want to go, and I just wanted to chicken out and get out of there. But I had my daughter holding my hand, and I had to be brave for her. So I went where I didn't want to go. And then the person who was giving the tour was telling all these amazing stories about the, 10 and 11-year-old boys who worked in the mine. And so I forgot that I was about to die at any minute and started listening to their stories, and came up with a story of my own. So it's a story about a boy who works in the mine. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll leave the Q&A open if anybody has any other questions. I do want to mention, though, that courtesy your lovely publishers, we have prize books to give away. So if anybody in our audience is interested in winning some books by Heather or Ben, I'm pointing to where they are on my screen. I don't know. Heather or Ben, I have books written by the two of you to give away. For those in the audience, if you email me, I will just change my screen name here to my email address, because then you can all see it and it's nice and easy, hopefully, for you to make record of. There we go. So I am paige.mcgeorge@letlib.ca. Audience members, send me an email if you're interested in winning a book by Heather or Ben. If you are a teenager, an actual real life teenager, not just a grown up pretending to be a teenager, if you are a real life teenager, do kind of identify that in your email to me. Say, hi, I'm Bob. I'm a teenager. I was at the Heather and Ben show, and I would really like to win one of their books. I will then put you nearer to the top. I'm more likely to give books away to actual teenagers than grown-ups. Grown-ups, though, if you want to enter, you can enter. If there are no teenagers, I'll put your names in as well. But I do want to, give first shot to actual teenagers for books about actual teenagers. Well, fictional teenagers, but
Yeah, I've been a teenager pretending to be a grown-up for a few decades now, so
yeah,
I think they're teenagers.
Grown-ups, you can buy your own books. Hopefully. And if you do want to buy your own books, the University Bookstore is our official bookseller for this year's WOTS. Because we couldn't have them in a big tent downtown, you can, however, go to their to the University Bookstore website and order all of the WOTS books from there. They have a ton of them in stock, so you'll be able to get them like that. All right. I'm going to do a couple more quick questions before I let you go. Ben, what is your favorite rom-com, since you said you were excited to write a teen rom-com?
Ooh, that's a very, very good question. I think She's All That would probably be at the top. But then again, I like Save the Last Dance a lot. So I'm going to go with Save the Last Dance, actually.
Yeah. I mean, and a better soundtrack than the first
Yeah, exactly. It's honestly because of the soundtrack and that musical number at the end where it's her audition. So I'm going to live my truth. I'm going to go with crap. I just forgot the title. I have all the rom-coms going through my head. It's downloading in my head right now. Save the Last Dance.
Save the Last Dance. Yes, that is a great one. And for those of you in the audience, available at the Lethbridge Public Library. I say that because I also do the movie selections at the library. So, let's see, Heather, did I have a quick and fun question for you? I don't have one jotted down. Do you have a favorite rom-com? Or
I don't really watch rom-coms.
What is your movie genre of choice?
Lately, I've been watching action movies.
Excellent.
Yeah, so every Saturday
Explosions
night.
and face punches.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't know why I'm just on this action movie kick, but
it's satisfying sometimes.
What's a really good one?
What's that?
What's a really good action movie? Because people ask me for recommendations, and that's the one genre I can never think of a good one.
Well, we watched all the Bond movies recently, from the first one to the end, and a lot of them were trash. I would say if Daniel Craig is in it, it's good. That's just my blanket statement. If Daniel Craig is in a movie, action or not, it's good.
That's very valuable.
Yeah, and then my kind of guilty pleasure action. No, it's not a guilty pleasure. I like Taken with Liam Neeson. I like all three. Taken 1, 2, and 3 are good movies.
He has a style for sure. He has a way of making those movies. Excellent. Well, we might have one last question. So I'm going to give you each one more not as quick question, and then I think we'll be good for our time. Ben, we'll start with you. From the audience, they love the humor in your books. How do you fit the humor in so smoothly?
Oh, wow. I think everything in the world is both horrible and funny, and to write about the horrible, I lean into the funny.
Mm-hmm. That works.
Yeah.
Do lines, like funny lines or funny things like that, ever pop into your head and you have to jot them down to use later?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I was trying to make it a really, really fast answer. I honestly, yeah, because I think whenever I've been lonely when I was younger, or even as an adult, people have been like, if you're funny, you'll make friends. Whenever I'm sad, I'll watch funny comedies and then I'll perk up. So I think humor is not this separate thing from all the big emotions for me. So whenever I write about any big emotions, including anger, or sadness, or just grief, I think humor just finds a way of seeping in.
Definitely, definitely. Heather, one last question for you from the audience, about characters. So one thing I noticed with your books is they have a very strong sense of character. The characters are very, very important, and they're very, very they're all very different and individual. One of the audience members would like to know the inspiration behind Bun O'Keefe. Where did you come up with Bun O'Keefe? How did you come up with Bun O'Keefe?
Yeah, I don't really know the answer to that question. That book, it was kind of really, it sounds really weird and flaky, but it kind of came to me and it was all really vague. It was like, it was this girl and then it was this group of people she was going to meet, and it was going to have this certain vibe to it. And I remember talking to my kids about it, and I'm like, I have this book and it's like coming to me, but I don't know what it is. And they're like, well, what is it? I'm like, I don't know. It's like a gang. And they're like, you're writing about a gang? And then there's this big joke about, singing gangs and a musical and all the snapping and stuff, West Side Story. And I'm like, no, it's nothing like that. I can't explain it. And I still can't explain it now. But yeah, she just kind of came to me. And again, it was the process of staying with her for a little while and getting to know her and getting to know who she was. And when writing Bun, I oftentimes when I'm talking about getting really close to a character, I find it's like you have to take 2 steps in and then take 1 step back. So for me, it's like getting really close to them and to the difficult things they might be going through. But if you're too close, it gets too muddy and you can't see and you have to pull away a little bit. So it's like you're partly that character, you're partly feeling what they're feeling, you're partly watching them. That might sound really weird, but that's how I write.
Excellent. And I should mention as well that Bun O'Keefe is our September Teen Book Club pick. So that is the book that we're talking about on Tuesday. If any of the attendees, again, are teenagers and are very speedy readers, I think I have 1 or 2 copies of the book left. If you can come to the Crossings branch on Saturday, I will give you a copy of the book. And you can join us on Tuesday to talk about it on our Discord server, because online programming is a thing that we're doing right now. Excellent. Well, thank you, Heather, and thank you, Ben, for joining us for this first teen session of Word on the Street. It was a delight to talk to you, and I feel I have a good sense of your writing styles and your book styles now. And I hope that our audience felt that they got their questions answered and are going to go pick up all of your books and read all of your books now.
Thank you so much for having us. This was so fun.
It's great.
I'm glad you enjoyed popping up in our virtual festival. And someday, hopefully, we will be able to bring you to actual Lethbridge.
Very soon. Very soon.
Show you all the cool things that we have.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you so much, Paige.
Our next session for audience members who would like to join us is starting at 2:15, and it is with Sabina Khan and Lisa Onome, and it is about belonging. So we're going to kind of frame the discussion about belonging. So again, that starts at 2:15. Join us back here on Zoom. You can still grab tickets for free in Eventbrite, and that'll get you the super secret Zoom link. And thanks again, Shar, for being our ASL interpreter, Heather and Ben for being our authors, and I will see you all again in about 10 minutes.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.